I was 7 years old and I took a trip to the bank with my dad, and the bank teller offered me a sugary lollipop. My parents always told me, I shouldn't eat candy, sugar's terrible for my teeth. So I said, well, why can't I make a healthy lollipop that's good for my teeth? And I latched onto that idea like I was hanging on for dear life.
What were you doing at 9 years old? Because today's guest was building a sugar-free lollipop empire. Alina Morse is the founder and CEO of Zolli Candy, the fastest growing sugar-free candy company in America. And she started it at 9 years old. No co-founders, no MBA, just a big idea, a kitchen experiment, and parents who said, why not? Today, Alina is running a multi-million-dollar candy empire, changing how we all think about candy and health, and still in college. In this episode of Hack Your Happiness, you will learn how to turn a kid idea into a global brand, the real facts about how Alina stays calm under immense pressure, and what she wants every person, teen or adult, to know about betting on yourself. So if you've ever had a wild idea or felt like the odd one out, this one's for you. Let's dive in. Welcome to Hack Your Happiness.
Did you know that many of you who listen to the show haven't subscribed yet? So could we ask you a little favor? If our podcast brings you a small bit of happiness and you love the message and what you can learn, the easiest and free thing that you can do is just hit the subscribe button. And our commitment to you is that we're going to keep bringing you the best guests that we can get and bring more happiness insights and ways that you can make your life a little bit happier.
Alina, welcome to Hack Your Happiness.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're so excited because you are an iconic and incredible young entrepreneur who built a sugar-free candy company, Zolli Candy, and you started it so young, before you were even a teenager, which I think is just the coolest thing ever. So take us back to the beginning. What started Zolli Candy?
Yeah, this is my favorite story. I tell it all the time, and believe it or not, I actually never get tired. I think I've probably told this story, God, probably in the hundreds, but it's a goodie. So I was 7 years old and I took a trip to the bank with my dad, and the bank teller offered me a sugary lollipop. My parents always told me, I shouldn't eat candy, sugar's terrible for my teeth. So I said, well, why can't I make a healthy lollipop that's good for my teeth so that I could eat candy without it being bad for me and without you saying no? And my dad thought about it for a moment before responding, and I think he was taken aback because it's a simple idea, but there really wasn't a solution out there. There wasn't a candy that was not only not bad for you, but was actually good for you. And I latched onto that idea like I was hanging on for dear life, and I didn't let it go for the next 2 years. I researched every day. I looked into manufacturing facilities, and I spent and poured so much of my time after school as an elementary schooler into wanting to create this business, wanting to make the candy. And I didn't want to be an entrepreneur necessarily. I didn't realize what I was getting myself into, but I was very passionate about making something that could help people smile. And after 2 years of research and plant trials, Zolli Pops were born.
Oh my gosh, I love that because it's so true. I think we've all been there when we're like, I want to eat this candy, but I know it's not good for me, or like I know that like maybe I should brush my teeth or something after. I feel like sometimes it feels so like icky on your teeth. So I love that your candies not only, are not bad for you, but they actually help your teeth. I love that.
That's incredible.
It's so cool. And you started it so young.
Yes, and absolutely. What was it like to formulate this kind of never before made product? Take us behind the scenes in the production and tasting and testing processes.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun creating a candy. Nonetheless, I think I am so fortunate to work in such a fun industry, just centered around smiles and innovation. But sugar-free candy had seen no innovation in the previous decade from when I launched, which was in 2014. And I took that as a challenge for sure, of how can I make an industry that is traditionally seen as like geriatric and grandma's purse candy and make it exciting. And that was really the goal. I looked at what my favorite candies were, and obviously the initial idea was for a lollipop. So I looked at, what was in the market: Dum Dums, Tootsie Pop, Blow Pops. and I just kind of zeroed in on their ingredient list, and then stripped away, the sugar, the artificial flavors, the colors, and tried to one by one find substitutions. I initially trialed it in my kitchen at home, and I ruined like one of our appliances, and my parents were like, we're done with that. If you want to do something, you can pool your money. And so I poured my life savings into initial plant trials. I reached out to manufacturing facilities on LinkedIn, and I called, and my parents helped me get in touch with these manufacturing facilities that I came across, and I was able to schedule a tour. I was able to send them what I had put together research wise for an initial ingredient list, and their in-house food science teams help refine these initial ingredients. But in the finalized product, after hundreds of iterations, truthfully, and truly bad iterations, I might add, they were disgusting. But we finally got to something that was workable. And funny enough, my initial ingredient list was not too far off of what we actually ended up using, which is just kind of beyond what I could have imagined my first, ingredient list to be actually somewhat right, considering I had no high school diploma, college degree, and knew nothing about food science or dentistry. It was nuts, but my friends were fantastic taste testers. I have a younger sister. She's 4.5 years younger than me. Her name's Lola, and she was integral in taste testing all the products. And we go through that process every time we create a new product. It never gets old. Truthfully, like, I have the best job in the world. I'm like real life Willy Wonka.
I love that so much. So how long did it take for you to finally come up with that last iteration?
Yeah, I mean, well, over the course of 2 years was our research and plant trials and taste testing, before we had refined just the original assorted package of lollipops. So, we probably went through hundreds of different flavor, color combinations, before we had something viable. But even then, we were innovating on the fly, and we had issues with the product, and we had to kind of go back and reverse engineer some of those processes. And it was an ongoing challenge, for our first year of true business operation. But now we've got it down to a science, and our R&D process is pretty quick, which it didn't used to be. So it's something I'm proud of.
Oh my gosh, Alina, that is the coolest. I think it's fascinating how, as a child or as a teenager, you can really bring like a fresh perspective to this industry, like you were saying there, because it really has allowed you to create something that is so needed, but was not being, kind of identified or focused on. I love that. And so obviously you mentioned your parents, you started off in your kitchen kind of making candy and then quickly moved to a bigger scale facility. But overall, how did your parents support you in building a business starting so young?
Gosh, I have just the best support system, the best family. My mom has worked in sales for most of her career, and my dad is a CPA, so he's an accountant. And I think their mix of business experience definitely bled into my passion for business and for entrepreneurship and being an inventor. Um, they always fostered this, especially being the parents of two young girls, always fostered this feeling and reality that women, as young women, we can do, first of all, anything that men can do, and do it better, and that we can truly accomplish anything regardless of where we come from, our age, our gender, and that level of support and confidence that my parents instilled in me from such a young age really just fueled, I think, my career, and still does. I mean, children inherently have a curiosity and a drive for learning and knowledge, and can usually latch on to some sort of lifetime passion. But without those parental figures that are willing to listen and perpetuate ideas that might seem childish, like candy that cleans your teeth sounds ridiculous. But my parents didn't make me feel as though my ideas were any less significant than, a great inventor like Bill Gates. They were like, that's a great idea. You know, you could be that next great entrepreneur. And it made all the difference. So I really do owe all my success and confidence and support system to my parents. They taught me everything I know about business.
That's amazing. And I definitely think that being able to be supported when you're having an idea instead of kind of shot down really helps create that confidence.
Exactly.
And I know that our parents have also really showed us
Very
that,
similar, yeah.
you know, you can really do whatever you put your mind to as long as you really focus.
And I think that, even if, when you first started off with the idea of candy that cleans your teeth, or, if a parent is talking to their child about another idea that seems like it's never been done or impossible, if you just believe in your child or believe in your teen or whatever it is, eventually they can iterate upon that idea enough to actually make it realistic enough to actually, put into market or make an impact and a difference with it. So I think that's a huge
Absolutely.
part.
Yeah, I mean, my dad still works for the company today, and he gets asked constantly how, how he fostered that entrepreneurial spirit, or, his best advice for other parents of budding entrepreneurs, or parents that want to see their kids do something entrepreneurial. And his advice is always just like, you don't create an entrepreneur, you don't build an entrepreneur. It's fostering a spirit of you can do anything, and always having that open dialogue. Kids aren't always offered a seat at the table and taken seriously, but when given the opportunity, kids rise to the occasion. Um, and if you don't, as a parent, you don't discount that, childhood curiosity and ideas can't turn into something meaningful. Um, I think that there's a huge correlation between that upbringing and successful entrepreneurs. And it also happens in the reverse. People are doubted their whole lives, and they have a kind of a fire under them to do something powerful. I'm grateful that my experience was the former, but entrepreneurs come out of all scenarios and situations, and um, I always just encourage parents to be really mindful of uh, the way that they interact with their kids and their ideas.
And what was it like growing up having this kind of business? Did you feel like you missed out on any part of your childhood or your teenagehood?
Um, I'm sure I did. Like, there was a lot of sacrifices, and there's still a lot of sacrifices. I'm in college at Michigan State right now. I'm in my college house, and um, last weekend I had Costco road shows. We were launching in Costco, so I was in Utah at the largest Costco store in the world. Uh, and I was a little bummed because there was a basketball game that all my friends were going to, and I was like, oh, I have to sell my basketball ticket. Like, that sucks. There is an ongoing trade-off. And although that seems insignificant, a huge Costco launch versus a basketball game, but you don't get these years back. And so I've tried to do a really good job of being a balanced entrepreneur, to the extent that I can be, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that, like, when weighing um, a party or weighing, a date night versus something truly integral and crucial for the growth of your business, you have to make those sacrifices. And because I love my job and I'm really passionate about our mission and what we're doing at Zolli, I'm willing to make those sacrifices. And so I can't, dwell too much on feeling like I've missed out, on things. Um, when I'm sure that there has been those, but there's also been a gaining of so much other experience and unique experience that I wouldn't trade for the world. So growing up alongside a business has required a lot of trade-off, but ultimately I think it's perspective, and the way that I view it is just, I'm so lucky to get to live in both worlds, the adult working world and also I guess I'm an adult now, so like it's all one world in a sense, but throughout middle school, high school, it was a very clear separation between my job, and then I would just go back to high school, real world. So it's been a kind of a dual Hannah Montana existence, uh, but it's definitely fostered a really unique view on the world and on my end that is just, it's so special and unique. I wouldn't change it for anything.
I completely know what you mean because I know even Anastasia and I sometimes will have like a speaking engagement and we're like changing in the car out of our school clothing into work clothing, and it's like I feel like I'm living in a movie.
Yeah,
So I know what
exactly.
you mean, but I like, Alina, how you framed it as like, yes, of course, like it takes sacrifice, but you're not like losing something necessarily, because if you look at it from the right perspective, you're actually gaining so much, so many connections, experiences, so much knowledge. And so I think, I mean, regardless, nobody is ever completely satisfied. It's always like the grass is greener on the other side. For people looking into your life, they might wish that they have something. And then looking at, the classic, high school experience or college experience, sometimes one might really think that they're missing something like a basketball game. And so I think being really grateful is something that we talk about a lot on our podcast as well.
Well, and I think gratitude is the cornerstone of not having regrets. But I also, do prioritize. I like to say better than some entrepreneurs, because some entrepreneurs I've met are very hardcore, which I totally respect, but they have no personal life. They have no balance, and that's burnout. And I've had stages of my life where it's been very work heavy as opposed to a solid balance, and that ebbs and flows. But ultimately, like, I think my choice to attend university versus just working full time was a conscious choice for balance. So, I not to say that, other entrepreneurs aren't doing it right in the sense of having a balance of a social life or other experiences. But I do think that I'm intentional about having a life also. Whereas, like, and it's not just entrepreneurs, it's people in corporate positions. And I see it in my peers that, like, they go off to investment banking and they're working 80 hours a week, and then the social life dwindles, but you have to pull yourself back. And I think I've been doing this for long enough that I've recognized if you don't have a social life, like, it doesn't matter if your job is really cool. Like, your life is gonna suck.
Totally. I know what you mean, because if you are like taking a long-term perspective of like you want to keep working on your business or you want to stay in your job for the next, 20 to 30 to 40 years, like that's going to be really hard to just completely keep your foot on the gas the whole time, right? So it's important to have those ebbs and flows, and also, spend time with your loved ones or try hobbies and all of that. But going back to when you were, especially before college, or maybe in your college experience, your high school and middle school experience, how did your peers react to you starting a business? Because I feel like that's not something that a lot of teens do, especially not at your level so early on. So how were your friendships and your social relationships at school?
Well, it wasn't always as smooth sailing as it is now. I think a big part of my adolescence was feeling like I was living this double life that nobody else understood, um, which pushed me to find and build cohorts of other young entrepreneurs that spanned multiple continents. I had, some of my closest friends during various stages of my life that were living in Europe and Australia. And I felt that those were the only people that I truly connected with, because they understood, living this dual life and having a very busy, committed life to business. And it wasn't until I think early high school when my peers, my school peers, started to understand they were taking, a sport really seriously. And they had, a rigorous schedule that for training and whatever else. So they started to understand the commitment that I had with Zolli. And they started to, I think, have a level of appreciation for it. Throughout, adolescence, like, I candidly was like a really easy target of bullying and like getting made fun of, because I was in a more public light and I was on social media, from an early age, and like I was cringy. And so it made it so easy for people to make fun of me, and it was really hard to make friends. When I went to high school, I started to meet, better people, started to forge more meaningful relationships beyond just a uh, superficial kind of like clout chasing kind of relationship. And then in college, I couldn't be more grateful for the relationships that I've built, especially the strong female friendships, that have really taught me how much more there is to life and how much more there is to friendship than your occupation or your major. Um, I just feel so grateful that I found truly my people, that I get to live through those teenage years, those younger adult years with, because now I feel like we're on the same track. Like, yes, maybe I'm a couple years ahead in terms of career, but everybody else is kind of in the same boat. We're looking for jobs. It's easier to relate kind of at this stage.
Absolutely. And I feel like definitely there's like that kind of period of time where, you know, friendships come difficult, I think, for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to know that, you know, better days will always be coming.
Oh yeah, kids are mean. Like, I mean, it's fine. It's just like you got to get over it. You got to get through it. I I feel for this generation, like Gen Alpha, that is now like solely living on social media, because people are so mean behind their screens too. It's terrible. Like, I get hate comments, and like as a 20-year-old, I'm like, okay, I don't care. But like 16-year-old Alina was like crying in the club about it. Like, it was terrible. Um, but it's just one of those things. When you put yourself out there, you want to do something that's trailblazing, that's never been done before. Like, you have to be cringy, and you have to be this standout personality. Um, and that's always going to get backlash. But the second you let that define you, like, that's when you lose. It's not like the public perception that counts. It's, what are your goals, and what are the people around you and your meaningful inner circle think. It took me years to understand that, like, being belittled by people on the internet, or like, middle school bullies, like, it just should have no significance.
It's like that kind of mindset of like, don't take criticism or hate from people you would not take like valued advice from. I think that's an important kind of way to determine who to give your attention and energy to, especially in social media, where it's like, you've never met this person, you probably never will. Like, it's hard to, justify giving someone that much of your attention once you kind of put that mindset shift on. But I like what you said about, you're doing something different, and sometimes people kind of, especially when you're younger, don't appreciate that so much, because it's kind of like that kind of tall poppy syndrome, right?
Yeah.
People don't know how to kind of react and respond when they have never experienced their own kind of pressures or stresses in the career world or the corporate world. So I like that, as you get older, you find people who resonate better with you, and it's easier to concentrate your friendships on them. I love that.
Yes. And
Beautifully put.
and your business has been incredible from such a young age, and you know, you've just grown so much, I'm sure. But what is the hardest lesson you had to learn early on?
That no is going to be the most frequent word I've ever heard, evidently. It's just no's and rejections constantly as an entrepreneur. And I guess I didn't recognize how kind of desensitized you will become, because those first rejections, you take so personally, and it's hard not to, especially when you're growing a business and you're growing a brand that is consumer facing. You're going to take that criticism very personally. Your business is like your baby, and somebody insults your baby and you're pissed, understandably. But you have to become Teflon. That was ultimately my hardest thing, was like, I couldn't understand why, buyers didn't want to put it on Walmart store shelves immediately. Until, you read the data and you read the track record, and you have to build a rapport with these customers, and you get a couple bad reviews, but then you get a bunch of good reviews. And so I think those just initial rejections, like, even I went on Shark Tank and I didn't get a deal. And that was one of those things that, like, Mr. Wonderful telling you no, that sucks. It's one of those things, you just gotta get over it. So I obviously am living in the yeses, and trying to appreciate the yeses more. But as people, as entrepreneurs, as anybody really in the working world, you're going to hear no a lot, and you got to just let it roll off your back.
Totally. It's so difficult, but I agree, Alina. It definitely does become something that you become used to and it kind of gets desensitized. But those initial rejections
They
can
feel
be
very
tough. They
personal.
can be. But I think when you realize that someone's saying no to the product, not to you as a person, it really does help because it can be so painful, especially early on. And I think that, a piece of advice that my dad shared with me, which I think can apply to business or to relationships or to a job or to life in general, is like, if you are focusing, like you kind of said, focus on the yes, focus on the people who love your product, focus on the people who appreciate you and your time, rather than always focusing on the people who don't, because then you realize why people, appreciate that product or why people appreciate you, and it's more empowering and encouraging in that sense. Can we just take a moment to appreciate the fact that Alina started this business when she was 9? If you're inspired by her, imagine who else in your life might be. Send this podcast episode link out to anyone in your life who has a big idea but is waiting for the right moment to start or act on it. Alina is living proof that the time is now. So send that episode link out, and now let's get back into the conversation. And you shared when you were younger, you felt quite nervous, especially, in those initial pitches and initial situations. So how did you handle those situations like QVC or Good Morning America or Shark Tank or pitching retailers? And do you have any advice for the person listening on what they should do the next time that they feel nervous?
Yeah, well, what I didn't realize when I was younger is it wasn't just nerves. Like I have anxiety. Like I was like I was just like, oh, I'm nervous. Like I have stage fright. As an adult, I'm like, no, I was totally anxious. And so for that, I say, like, when you're an adult, like, go to therapy. And like, you'll get a really good toolkit of like mindfulness and meditation. And that is so much of what my routine is now. Even, coming on and doing like a podcast, like from the comfort of my own home, like I would totally get nervous. Um, and so I think now that I've built the skill set to be like, you're okay, like you're to be more self-soothing in a really positive way where you acknowledge the nervousness and have the tools to kind of work through it. That has been so meaningful. But I was a theater kid, so I just sometimes had to take myself out of that situation and be like, I know my stuff. I'm relying solely on muscle memory because I've put in the work. I've memorized this pitch. I like to bring up my TED Talk was a great example. I locked myself in my room the 2 days before my TED Talk because I had so much anxiety before doing something like that. I hadn't memorized it. So for the 2 weeks prior, when I had my script done, like it was set, it was timed right, I had 2 weeks to learn it. I just didn't. I kept putting it off because I was paralyzed with this fear of like, if I even start to learn it, that makes it real. Um, and so I just didn't. I just didn't learn it. And then 2 days before, I go in to rehearse, and my dad and my publicist and my mom are there. The stage managers are there to run through this dress rehearsal. And I'm like, well, I don't know it. And they're all looking at me like, what? And I'm like, I haven't been able to learn it. I'm so scared that if the second I start learning it, I'm gonna mess it up. And they're like, well, you have to learn it. So I locked myself in my room for 2 days. I mean, other than to eat and use the bathroom, I was like, I'm going to learn this all weekend. And I did. And I think that that was like a testament to, first of all, like not letting anxiety rule your life, like just buckling down and doing the work, and then relying on that muscle memory and the work that you've done to outshine the nervousness, has been like the only thing that's allowed me to do some of these big media things, and like especially in front of like live studio audiences is very nerve-wracking. But I also try to view it as fun. Like it is, ultimately I'm selling candy and I'm talking about my story. I'm talking about something that I'm really passionate about, which makes it easier than talking about something that I wouldn't believe in or don't like. Um, but it never gets easier. Like it is one of those things that, especially being in a space where like speaking is so prevalent, and I want to go to conferences and I want to share my story. There's always going to be a level of nerves. I would say like my best advice is just find those tools that work for you, whether it's mindfulness, meditation, being really prepared, um, talking to someone else through some of that anxiety, acknowledging it. There's no one way to fix it.
Thank you for being so, open about, your struggles with anxiety and, the amount of nervousness before some of these presentations. Because I watched your TED Talk and you were so smooth in it. I never would have known that you only memorized it like the weekend prior.
I was terrified.
I think it's a good reminder though, because sometimes we look at people like you or our favorite celebrities or another entrepreneur, someone that we look up to, and we're like, wow, if I was them, I also would be, crushing this presentation or this interview. But I'm stuck with me and like I'm nervous and I'm scared, but realizing, what, everyone or at least a lot of people struggle. But
Yes.
if you can find the tools that work for you and put in practice and, remember that it's kind of a human component of nervousness, it really does help.
And I agree that muscle memory is so helpful. As soon as you know, like you know your stuff and that you've memorized it, it does make it that much easier because then when your brain goes like, when it's like stressed out,
Yes.
but your mouth knows exactly what to say, it's very reassuring.
Yes.
And business is all about problem solving and dealing with the next challenges, kind of like you said. You didn't memorize it, but you just kind of kept going. What are your hacks for staying calm when issues appear? And how do you stay calm when you're experiencing all of these challenges?
Um, it's taken so many years of like running around like a chicken with my head cut off whenever something bad happens. Like, um, training myself to not be in like the fight or flight mode and just viewing problems um, in a more positive light is just repetition and practice. You're going to be hit with so many problems as entrepreneurs, as just working professionals. Um, there's going to be issues that arise, and it's all about reframing and just working through it, slowly and calmly. Um, I think it's never paid off in my experience to freak out. As soon as you start freaking out, you're going to make irrational decisions, or you're going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. And so, um, I've made so many mistakes in that sense. Like it naturally, as humans, like you freak out and you say something, or you freak out and you're like, okay, this is a solution. But if you slow down and really try to break down a problem, understand it, ask for other people's input, you'll come to usually a really good solution, efficiently, effectively. Um, but it's just repetition. Like you'll never get it right the first time, or if you do, it's usually a fluke. Like you gotta hone that skill of problem solving in a calm manner, and like it's human nature to freak out. So you really have to train yourself, at least in my experience, like to stay calm because business goes wrong all the time. Like all the time. Things almost never go to plan.
It's true.
Absolutely.
It is true.
And it's so true that, you just can't make the right decisions. You're not going to say the right thing. You're not going to be the kindness to your team member if your brain's going like insane and that
You're
just
acting on it.
yeah, exactly. So being able to kind of like take a step back and being like,
Or even like, I know if you're like in a real moment of panic, like definitely don't make major choices or have a major conversation, but
sleep on
also,
it.
yeah, sleeping on it or like going outside or like, going for a little walk around the block. Those are all like great little quick reset hacks, right? To take. Yeah. And I want to shift the conversation a little bit to AI because I think, as teens, as young adults, this is really at the forefront and honestly of everyone's minds. I think it's so much, there's so much prevalence about AI on the news and on social media. So, as a young adult at the helm of the company and living in the age of, AI emerging, how do you feel about AI and are you excited? Are you unfazed? Are you afraid about it? And how do you like to use it, in your daily life?
Really great question. I think before I even kind of say like to disclaim because I've been asked about AI before, and I've kind of been caught with my pants down in the sense of like I didn't understand the environmental ramifications, so I kind of sounded uneducated. I was like, well, I know that there's got to be some downfall, but I don't know what it is. And I'm sure there's some clip of me actually saying that. And that's embarrassing. Like, but of course, like people just don't know things, and like I've more times than not have had to like just put a pin in it and come back and give a real answer. Um, I, as a Michigander and someone who understands the real ramifications of like environmental impacts of AI, like I consider myself a environmentalist, and so I try to be really cognizant within my team of, you know, what are we using AI for? How prevalent is it? And is it just to make our lives easier, or is it to make a real impact? Um, and so I try to be intentional in that sense. I also am really intentional of our use of AI as to not take away the real learning. We still have to read things. We still have to double check things because AI makes mistakes. Um, and sometimes it just makes stuff up. And like we can't just not check that before we send it to someone or we send a communication. Um, and so I always am weary of it replacing laziness. And I don't want it to curate that. Because I think, if you're not truly learning and you're not truly understanding, um, then why are you doing it? I'm a huge proponent for learning, hence why I'm in college when I probably didn't have to. I probably could have just worked. But I really wanted to hone those skills and learn them and concrete them in my mind. So that being said, business and social media and everything is turning automated. So to not acknowledge that that is the way that the world is moving, in my opinion, is jaded and kind of dumb. Like you have to be on time with, the rise of social media when brands are using it, and the same wave is happening with AI. And I think that there's so many fantastic applications. One that comes to my mind, this is like totally unprompted, like I pay for this, but like ManyChat and the automated messaging services within social media, to help capture customer acquisition at the source when people are scrolling and often not thinking about purchasing, I think is a super great tool for business owners, and a great case study in how we can leverage AI use to connect and build community. Um, and so I definitely encourage it. And as a Gen Z CEO, that has an internship program that we run every summer for college students, like we encourage, them to bring AI solutions for any aspect of our company. And we have our interns audit, if they're in finance, look at our financial systems. Do you know of any AI or any automated practices that we can enhance our business with, do it to, use to make us faster, better equipped to talk to customers, and put our energy where it's meaningfully used. So there's a real double-edged coin, and I am excited about the future of AI for business owners, but I also encourage people to do their research and be careful, because usually when things seem too good to be true, they are. So you have to be aware of like the downsides.
I 100% agree. And I really appreciate how you mentioned that you're intentional with how you use it, because I think that it's hard to just say, well, I'm just not going to use AI at all, because I think that it is a great resource that,
Especially
when used sparingly, it can definitely be very helpful.
especially
But
when your competitors are, using it to automate their processes. It's
absolutely,
important to be on the
but you
same
can't
page.
overlook
Yeah.
the consequences of using it.
And also, I like how you emphasize learning, because even like I know there's so many studies, or at least there's studies that show like the effects of AI on your brain if you just rely on it for everything. And so I think, practicing those critical thinking skills and reading things over to make sure that you completely understand, like if you're signing something or if you're going to be utilizing something or hiring someone, like really making sure that you also are an active participant in that process, I think is essential.
Yeah, it's a great aid, and that's why, like in my personal belief, like I don't think it could ever replace people, and people are the cornerstone of business. Um, and so I love the enhancement, and it can make people smarter and faster, and um, especially like when you're learning something brand new, I think it could be a great tool. But just like you said, there's an emphasis on balance within it, and just being intentional.
I love
100%.
that. Yeah. And acting on our passions is such a huge and key part to our happiness. So, if the person listening has an idea or an opportunity but is afraid to bet on themselves or to take a risk, what would you tell them?
You just have to go for it. I find myself even, even now after 10 years working in this great industry, sometimes second guessing myself, um, and finding myself in that fear loop of like, oh, what if it won't work? Um, but that active reframe of not just what if it won't work, but what if it does work? And, how can I set myself up for the best chance of success? Uh, it's such an exciting question to ask yourself. So I always encourage people to take that leap of faith. I believe that entrepreneurship is, there is an element of luck, there is an element of timing, but ultimately it's hard work that brings you to a place of success, and also good karma, I think, mixes in there. If you're doing something good, putting that good out into the universe, it comes back to you. Um, but truly, like, there's no one that's going to give you permission to take that leap. Um, and so why are you waiting around for somebody to send you that letter or to send you that email that authorizes you to follow your dreams? Because it won't come. So try to get out of that fear loop and take those risks and chances. And especially for the young people listening, there's no better time in your life where the risk is low. It's mitigated. You have so much life to live and so much time to, make that money back, or try something else or do a different career. So just why not give it a chance? Don't count yourself out. And tenacity and hard work always win over luck. So don't trick yourself into thinking that you're just unlucky. Maybe, you got to reframe your mindset and keep working at it until until it goes.
Exactly. Don't be the one to tell yourself no. Just give it a shot, bet on yourself, and then just kind of roll with it, because if you never try, you'll never know.
Absolutely.
And I think that kind of also ties into self-value, because a lot of us, we tie our self-value into our achievements, whether it's how well our business is doing or our grades or our popularity. And so I'm curious for you, how do you manage to, still keep your self-value intact if your business is going through a challenge, which is kind of inevitable?
Yeah. Well, it is definitely challenging as an entrepreneur to not tie my identity and accomplishments to the success of the business, because this is my baby. This is my ideation of me, of a manifestation of my ideas, and an ongoing reflection of my work ethic. So I think that separating uh, business success and personal success is challenging, but humans are made up of so much more than just accomplishments, as you said. Um, our relationships measure, at least in my mind, relationships measure my success as a person. The way that I make people feel, the good that I'm putting out into the world, not just on a business level, but on a daily kindness, and the way that I treat my body. Am I exercising? Am I nourishing myself? Am I, allowing myself rest and taking my vitamins, and like all these things, like they compound to self-value and self-worth. Um, and I think that it's so easy to fall into, just as you stated, like this direct correlation of self-worth and achievement. Um, but that's not actuality. That's not reality. And that's a it's just your brain lying to you. You're so much more than just accomplishments and a, I'm gonna date myself. Like your grades on a printed out piece of paper. I'm assuming everything is probably virtual now, but I guess when I was in elementary and middle school, they gave us like a real, like, actual book report kind of your grades. But it's more than that. It's truly like your accumulation of your existence. Um, and I just think that the sooner people can recognize that in their lives, the much happier you'll be. Because a lot of those things you can change. You can change if you're gonna, go for a walk every day, or if you're gonna, eat whole foods, or if you're gonna, give someone a compliment every day. All of those things compound into a accumulation of happiness and fulfillment.
I love that so much. And I think that it's so important to realize that you are not just the things that you've accomplished. Like you said, you are who you are and the way you treat other people and the way they feel about themselves after you've spoken to them. And I feel like that's such an empowering feeling because sometimes we can't help it if we don't do well on a test because maybe we just weren't in the right mindset, or maybe we just really forgot to study, or we just messed up and made some silly mistakes. But in the end, who we are as a person, the way we treat other people is really, in the end, how we make up who we are.
Yeah. So beautiful.
And I'm really curious, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? And if you have, what are your tips for managing these feelings?
I would be lying if I said that that was not an ongoing battle. I talked to so many content creators, entrepreneurs, my peers, my friends at school who don't feel like they're qualified to be in an honors class, or to be the recipient of a scholarship because other people are they fit the bill more, they deserve it more, and it's your brain lying to you, and it's just another tactic to kind of bring you down. And it's so natural for us as people, and especially as women, to like tear ourselves down internally, and to be the culprit of our own quitting before we even try kind of mentality. So I wish I had a sound bite or one tip that is representative of how I've overcome imposter syndrome, because it truly is ongoing. And I'll even, to this day, see an interview of myself and be like, oh, like, I shouldn't have been up there, or that, I'm not deserving of this. Or I didn't build, this brand or this team. And a lot of times it does take an external voice to tell me, like, no, like, you're doing great, and you did this and you built this, and so therefore you can accomplish hard things, which is why I am a huge advocate for building that inner circle and that group of trusted individuals that will always support you and get you with an encouraging word, because I can't always be intrinsically motivated and intrinsically empowering. That's not real. Like, people aren't just happy, bubbly all the time. So I think a lot of that I rely on sometimes other people to uplift me the same way I uplift them. And sometimes when I'm feeling really confident, I can pull myself out of that funk. But like, it's just such a real part of life. I think, most people that I've spoken to at the age of 20, 21 years old have experienced imposter syndrome so many times. So it's like just one of those things. It's just one of those parts of life, especially when you're going to put yourself in those circles where you maybe are doing something new or something scary.
I think it's the same as with the public speaking or the nervous moments. It's realizing, the people I look up to feel this too. So the difference between, them and if I stay here and just, quit before I even start, like you were saying, is like you can feel imposter syndrome and still keep going and still, just hear other voices that validate you and recognize, I've gotten myself to where I am, so I do deserve to be in this room and I do deserve to have these conversations and these connections. And it's challenging, but I think, people like you who share that they too have experienced imposter syndrome makes it easier for others to, push through that, because it's just a part of being a human. And that's why it's important to have those strong relationships, because we don't have to rely on ourselves for everything. That's why we have loved ones and teams and people.
And I love how you also mentioned, I know you said that you didn't really have any tangible tips, but I do think that you mentioned just knowing that, this is my kind of inner critic coming out. Like, what I have done is real. And I feel like that is such a good hack that you shared with us, because
Looking at your track record.
Exactly. And feeling like, oh yeah, but I didn't deserve all of that. But if you were awarded a scholarship or you got a good grade, that you do deserve it because you were given that for a reason.
Exactly.
I have been able to sleep so much better as of lately because of using the amazing Waking Up meditation app. It has completely transformed the way I sleep, plus how I think about meditation, since it has so many great explanations about how it works and the science behind it.
Sign up for Waking Up using the link in our show notes and save $30 off your first annual subscription. Now let's get back into the episode. And I know that you are obviously an incredible entrepreneur, but for the people listening who aren't entrepreneurs, how would you say that you can apply entrepreneurial thinking to daily life?
Well, to preface, I will say every job description that I have read as, a roommate of students that are looking for full-time positions right now, every application says we value entrepreneurial mindsets and entrepreneurial thinking. And so you don't have to be an entrepreneur, you don't have to be an inventor or have those goals to enact entrepreneurial mindsets in your daily life. And what I mean by an entrepreneurial mindset is a problem solver, someone that's going to proactively look for solutions and implement those solutions or bring those solutions to the table and is willing to take on, extra responsibility, showing initiative, staying an extra half hour, going above and beyond to support your team and to find solutions, like I said, is entrepreneurial thinking. Being driven outside of just, I'm going to do my daily 3 tasks, is super valued amongst any corporate position, any business. That's what I look for in my employees. I want them to be entrepreneurial and I want them to pilot programs within our organization that I could have never thought of. But their innovative thinking and initiative to bring those ideas to the table is so meaningful. And if I didn't have those entrepreneurial minds on my team, Zolli wouldn't be where it is today. It can't just be driven by one captain. That's why, companies are more and more emphasizing, we want this skill set, and universities and high schools and even middle schools are pushing entrepreneurship programs for kids that, even if you're going to be a doctor or you're going to be, a lawyer, you still need to have that forward thinking mindset. So I encourage anyone, regardless if you have delusions of grandeur to be an entrepreneur, look into taking an entrepreneurship class or listening to a seminar or webinar, podcast, whatever. Follow your favorite entrepreneur on Instagram and hear their tips and tricks, because those are valuable workplace skills. And they're also valuable skills in your daily life, like not just in your career, but thinking about problem solving every day as a person of society. That's important.
I love that so much. And I feel like that kind of connects to what we were talking about earlier a bit with AI, like almost having that critical thinking, because I feel like it can be so easy to see everything and hear everything and just be like, okay, that must be true. Or if someone says something, oh, yeah, like we can just go that way instead. Being able to come up with your own ideas and be able to kind of like I said, think critically, I think is so important, especially in this day and age where if you're not being super innovative or more motivated, you could become more replaced by AI and doing something more automated.
So true.
And I'm personally really curious, what are your favorite business books and shows, and do you have any recommendations?
Well, this is actually something that I've implemented in the last 6 months. I used to just listen to like business books, audiobooks, or I'd read, a business book. But instead I've started every morning. I meditate in the morning, and I also I write down to-do lists, try to organize my thoughts. But after that, I listen to any sort of daily briefing of the news, the finances, the economy. I try to stimulate my mind with current events, so that I'm on top of my game, so that I can operate, on a level that is on par with what's going on in the world on a macro scale. So that's something that I've implemented, and there's so many, like, Morning Brew Daily, I think, does a morning briefing. The Financial Times does a great one. The New York Times does a great one. I'm sure there's all sorts of podcasts out there that it's like 10 minutes every morning. And I feel like that sets me up for success. And then on, the business side, I'm always going to say that my longtime favorite business book is Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think that is the best simplistic understanding of business and money, especially for kids. So, number one recommendation. Let me think. Gary Vee has a lot of great audiobooks that I personally love, especially if you're interested in marketing. Traction is a great book. And I also like to recommend What the Heck is EOS, which is about entrepreneurial operating systems. EOS is something that we've implemented in my business to help get our team aligned. But ultimately, it can work for your life and organizing your life and ensuring that you're surrounding yourself with the right people to make you successful. So there's so many great ones. Honestly, it's hard to say. If you look at the New York Times bestselling list, like, you're going to find a great business book. But those are, I think, my top recs.
Incredible. We'll have to check those out.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
I like the idea of the morning briefings as well. And kind of on that note, you wear so many hats, Alina. It's incredibly inspiring, balancing college, which in of itself is a lot of work,
Definitely.
with a massively successful company. So if you can, and obviously I'm sure every day is a little bit different, but can you take us through like what a day in your life kind of looks like balancing all of this?
Yeah, every day's it is a little bit different. But typically I like to get my classes done in the morning, so when I can schedule them early, I do. But I wake up, reset for the new day. Like, I don't like the stress of the previous day or maybe the night before to carry in. So try to be intentional about, like, writing down my to-do list, or typing out my to-do list, and ensuring that I'm prioritizing the most important things. I do an email sweep to make sure I don't have anything I didn't respond to from the prior night. And then obviously if something comes in early in the morning, I stretch. I kind of get myself ready for the day, gotta hype myself up. I listen to my podcast, and then I do class, or meetings, or kind of whatever that day has in store. I like to work out. I'll do a spin class, or I'll do a yoga class, or a Pilates class. Those are really hard. And or I'll just go to the gym. I'll take one of my friends. I also play tennis at Michigan State, so play tennis a couple days a week. But that movement is really important. And then usually, in the evenings, it's just working. Like, I have meetings usually throughout the day, and then when it gets to the evening time, it's homework and work. And I like to, have fun, spend time with my friends. If we're having a party or going to a party, like, that's fantastic. But I'm perfectly happy with staying at home and reading a book, or staying at home and watching a movie. I very recently am in a relationship, so I'm pretty excited about that. And my boyfriend's very nice, and we'll just hang out too. And that's, like, it's just the dream. Makes me feel like I'm like a little girl with a schoolgirl crush. So that's a big fun part of my life. But now that I'm living in college in a house on my own, I have to cook and clean for myself. Not that I wasn't cleaning before, but, like, dorm life to actually being an adult, there's, like, errands and going to the store and all of the stuff that I took for granted that my parents would do for me, especially the cooking, is something that I now have to account for in my daily life. But I try to be really regimented, and I encourage, especially for people, maybe if you struggle with some anxiety, or you're just balancing a really busy workload, building routines that are manageable every single day allows you to celebrate small wins. And so that's kind of a tangent outside of just my day in the life, but truly what's helped me stick to consistently, okay, I do my morning routine, and I do my evening routine, and I feel like I have a sense of accomplishment for the day, is setting those small routines that I do feel like you complete it, I check it off the list, and I feel a sense of accomplishment that fuels me for the rest of the day.
I love how you prioritize also your movement. I think that's
Yes.
something that, is such a cornerstone to feeling good and thinking straight and clearly. So I love that. And I like how you have, time with friends and time to do your
You
work.
fit it all in.
You fit it all in a great way. And I love your hack about routines. And speaking of food, I know that this is definitely something that a lot of, young adults struggle with because it's such a massive leap and
Yes.
transition. So what is
Yes.
right? And so what is your go-to dinner on a busy weeknight?
I am so boring. I am not a good chef. I I love Trader Joe's because I can get freezer meals. If you've ever tried the Trader Joe's soup dumplings, chef's kiss. Those are really good. But when I am like cooking, I also do have a dining plan for the days that I am like not gonna cook and I don't want to DoorDash or like go out to order food. So I sometimes will go to the dining hall. It's my dirty little secret. Like I should be grown out of the dining halls, but at Michigan State they're really good, so I'm grateful. But I'll do some variation of like chicken. Sometimes I get the chicken ick. I don't know if this happens to anyone else, but like you look at it for too long and you're like, I don't know about that. So like chicken or steak or something like that. And I'll always try to do like either a potato kind of starch, rice, something to help balance that out, give me that carb, especially if I'm gonna work out. Um, and I try to find fun ways to eat vegetables, which I don't know if it'll ever get fun, but my recent kick has been, um, which I know this was a TikTok trend a while ago, so I know I'm behind, but those like cucumber salads where you make them in like the deli containers, and you like have fun mix-ins or toppings or add-ins. That has been a fun thing to experiment with, but I'm not that good of a cook. So it's just got to be simple and something that I can make sure is cooked through completely so that I don't like freak out and think I'm eating raw chicken.
I get it. I get that
Definitely.
fear. I think that I like how your dinners have like a balance. You're still getting, protein, veggies,
You're getting it all
carbs.
in.
So it's a good
Yes.
mix. Yeah.
Yes. And like some nights it is just mac and cheese. Like some nights it is just like freezer meal from Trader Joe's and like that's great. Or like frozen chicken tenders. Like I am not this like pinnacle of health. I just try most nights to eat relatively healthy. Because I eat candy all the time. Like it's that is my job. And granted, I make healthy candy, but of course I have to taste test the competitors. So I have to have some balance in my life.
Exactly. It's
Definitely.
important to know what's out there and what's coming out.
You have
Yeah.
to try the other candies.
Exactly.
So, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self when you're first starting out the business?
Oh, just don't be so hard on yourself. You're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay. Um, and just enjoy the journey. Take lots of photos, like document it. These are a lot of pieces of advice, but um, so much of childhood and especially like my childhood was so tied to entrepreneurship. Uh, it's hard not to feel like you just want to grow up and be out in the real world. But the real world, like, is always going to be there. So just enjoy where you're at. Being present is something that I've learned, especially recently as I am rapidly approaching like the big 21, which is like the ultimate adulthood milestone. Um, Being present in those moments is so valuable, and you'll look back on moments where you really were there and you really were living it and you were taking a photo and you wrote about it in your journal or whatever, and it's really special to look at those snapshots. And so prioritizing that presence and capturing those moments, like your future self will thank you. So that's what I always try to tell, myself now as I'm speaking to like a younger version of myself. Just appreciate it because the journey is really the most meaningful part. Don't rush trying to be older, trying to, get further in your career. Like just let things happen the way that they happen, because there's only so much control that we have. The rest is just like the universe working, and just appreciating that is sometimes hard to come to terms with, but something I always encourage like my younger self and also, like the younger people that I mentor, because it goes quick, I'm in my third year of college and I feel like I started last week.
It's so crazy, I know, and I think sometimes we only have that appreciation, like in hindsight, because I'm like, oh, I wish I was like 10 right now. But when I was 10, all I wanted to do was to finish high school, or finish school. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard. What brings you a small bit of happiness in everyday life?
I have a really rewarding job. Through Zolli, we also have a nonprofit called the Million Smiles Initiative, where we give millions of lollipops to kids through schools. A lot of them are underprivileged schools, and I think that the response that we get from these teachers and these classes is overwhelming. I receive letters, every week, every month from kids that are inspired to start their own companies, and videos and photos of kids smiling when they get to try candy that's truly good for them, or get to just bring some fun into the classroom. That's just the most rewarding part of my job, and I am so fortunate that I get to see that so consistently, and that's my bit of happiness, and it's in such a constant flow that it's a great reminder to myself of like smiles have amazing powers, and sharing smiles every day can bring anybody just that little burst of happiness, that little bit of happiness. So I think I'm in a really unique, fortunate position where those bursts are often.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that so much, and how like they'll write letters and send photos. I think that's incredible and very motivating.
Yes, so nice.
Yes.
Yes. So what is a motivational quote? I mean, do you have one that you love to remember? And if so, why?
My favorite quote is from my dad, and it is, "Work hard, try, believe, and never give up."
I love that so much.
That's so sweet. I like that it's your dad's quote too. That's adorable. I love it. And Alina, finally, where can our audience find you if they would like to keep up with you and learn more?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of everywhere. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and it's all just my name, Alina Starr Morse. And also I'm on Zolli. Like, I think that that's probably more interesting because there's more like actual business updates and not just like my life. But Zolli is Zolli Candy, and we're everywhere as well. But if any listeners have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on I would say LinkedIn is always the easiest because I actually like see the messages. But yeah, I would say that we're kind of everywhere, but if you ever have any questions, like, we're also real people, and like from a brand side and from a human side, like, we're here to support especially the next generation of young entrepreneurs.
Incredible. We'll have that linked in the show notes as well. But thank you so, so much, Alina, for joining us today. It's been so inspiring to speak to you and hear your story and advice. So thank you again.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you all. Keep smiling.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode.
And if you enjoyed this episode with Alina, we think you'll love our conversation with Sydney and Tony Lau, two sister entrepreneurs. With Sydney and Tony, we talk all about how to take bold leaps, not fear being judged, and tips for starting your own business.
We were crazy nervous. It was so insane. I probably never felt as nervous. The night before, let's say the big exam, or the big pitch, or the big something that you're just can't sleep. You lay in bed and you close your eyes and you're like, in 24 hours, when I'm in this bed again, it'll be done.
You can listen to our episode with Sydney and Tony now. It's linked in the show notes. See you next time.